Hey, how's it going, flight school owners and aviation enthusiasts? My name is Tim. I'm with Right Rudder Marketing. I was browsing the internet just the other day, and Reddit came across my Google search, and there's a post here that was asking about flight schools revenue, profit, and let me just share my screen really quick to show you what I'm talking about. So unfortunately for us, looks like this guy deleted himself. He looks like he wanted to be anonymous or whatever, but it's a relatively new thread. It was open about just a couple months ago, 5 months ago here. It's April right now, so we're going into May 2024. So, give or take, depending on when you watch this video, maybe the numbers may be skewed in any direction whatsoever. If you're in the flight school industry and the aviation industry, you probably know that our industry is volatile as hell, depending on if there's war, if there's conflict, or whatever it is, economic turndown, financial crises, and all that type of stuff. I'm just going to go ahead and skim through here and let's see if I can make this a little bigger for you guys. Okay. So this guy is doing some research about flight schools. Try to look in Google for some information. So what's the average revenue, average expenses, how many employees on average does a flight school have, what's the average profit margin, toughest thing about being a flight school, and what scares flight school owners the most. And if you're a flight school owner, feel free to drop in the comments some of your answers to these questions, or even post directly onto this thread on Reddit. The title is "Any Flight School Owner." If you want to look here, is there's the thread, whatever. I'll post this thread on the description. And I couldn't help but make a video because we just did a webinar, I want to say in January, about this exact topic. We were talking about the marketing plan for 2024, and one of the slides there was about revenue, was about profit and all that type of stuff, expenses. So I'm going to share this slide here from our webinar that we have here. This is the typical, I talk to flight schools all day. That's part of being the owner of Right Rudder Marketing. We do marketing for flight schools, and we talk to flight schools all day. And I think similar to what we do, a marketing agency for flight schools. I think here and later in the thread, the guy was talking about here. I want to start a social media marketing agency that picked flight schools as my niche. Hey, good for you. I hope you can join us. Maybe you can holler at me if you want into some tips and advice. What do you call it? So it looks like, I don't know if you actually became a flight school marketing agency like Right Rudder is. There's not many of us out there. So if you look in Google, marketing agency, flight schools, aviation industry, Right Rudder Marketing pops up pretty close to the top, if not number one. And there's a few of us out there, a few colleagues, I guess you can call peers. You can say that do the marketing for aviation companies, and it's a nice niche. It's a nice niche, and I think everyone that's in the flight school industry, anyone that's in the aviation industry, we love our jobs a lot. We get paid to fly, so it's kind of cool. Okay, so I want to talk about. There's a few questions here that aren't covered in the slide. But, average revenue. So it really depends, and I'll move my face for a little bit here. So there's startup, I'll move back here. Startup, scale, significance, and I called it apogee. A majority of flight schools are in the startup phase. I mean, I want to say more than 50%. I kind of estimated it at 60%. These are people that, they might have started as an independent CFI, CFII. They might have one plane, one Cessna 172 or a Piper or something like that, and they're just kind of starting up. They're usually under $1 million. That's usually, as far as annual revenue goes, they're usually under $1 million in annual revenue. Expenses and profits. So the first couple of years are going to be pretty high, just because your marketing costs are going to be a little higher, just because you haven't started. You're not established. If you're buying a plane, that's going to tear your expenses up through the roof. Hiring people, so on and so forth, your expenses are going to be pretty high. And I think it's pretty safe to say that 5% to 15% is a good kind of range you want to talk about as far as profit margins for flight schools. It's if you go to a hangar or an FBO and you start talking to other other pilots or other renters or other, just people that are, hanging around the airport. There's a famous expression that goes, to make $1 million in the flight school industry or in aviation, you need to start with 5 million. There's some truth to that. I don't, for example, Right Rudder Marketing, we're approaching, $1 million in revenue as well. And we're not anywhere. We started with zero. I started the company part-time and kind of grew it as it went. I also know some other flight schools that, they started with just one plane and now or one helicopter, and now they're, 15, 20 aircraft. They're in this scale significance spot where they're doing way more, multiple seven figures in revenue, annual revenue. So it's definitely possible to start in the flight school, start a flight school with low revenue, or, with not that much investment. Obviously, maintenance costs are the biggest kind of hit, I would say. And then, a lot of flight schools, I'll be quite honest with you, they do not invest in marketing. So that's one of the reasons, they kind of stay in the startup phase because they don't have a good marketing arm. Now, some flight schools do the marketing aspect pretty well. They have a great website. They have, constantly updated social media. They have some automations going with emails and all that stuff. They have newsletters. They have videos. I usually don't see that in the startup phase. I usually see that in the scale and significance phase here. So think about this, right? So one aircraft can probably handle about 2-3 CFIs, really. After that, you're really going to want to break into more CFIs. I mean, really, you're not limited on the number of CFIs. You're limited on the number of planes for your flight hours. Depends. I mean, it really depends. Every flight school is different across America, at least. I know this post was kind of targeted towards Europe. So numbers may vary depending on your market, but on average, I mean, America is probably the best place to do flights to run a flight school, just because there are so many out there. In Europe, I think the competition might be less, but your expenses might be a little higher. Your gas is higher, your maintenance costs might be higher, things like that. So yeah, 30% of schools, I'd probably say, kind of get to this multiple seven figures, just breaking past, maybe 2 million or so in annual revenue. There is a good portion of flight schools out there, about, a little less than 10%, that reach this significance phase. And those are the big, those are the, the number one, top three on Google search usually, that have, 15 aircraft. They're getting a lot of students, a lot of traffic coming onto their website, a lot of traffic coming into their office, their hangar. They're going to be at that level, and profit margins maybe can get a little higher. I believe there's a sweet spot somewhere around, I want to say 7 million in annual revenue, where you get to what's called economies of scale. So you usually at that point have your in-house maintenance. You usually have an A&P, an IA. You might have examining authority at your school as well. So you might be able to turn out more pilots, more certificated pilots. You don't need to rely on DPEs, for example, if you are an examining authority. That's another kind of stopgap with flight schools. Another challenge in our industry is getting enough DPEs to test our pilots, student pilots, whether it's private, instrument, commercial, CFII, MEI, whatever it is. It's definitely a place that it's definitely a point of what we call a bottleneck is DPs. DPs, maintenance are probably the two biggest two biggest bottlenecks in our industry. And now I don't run a flight school. I've flown in many flight schools before. I've worked at a flight school, and I also work with flight schools, for their marketing. So take this all with a grain of salt. Obviously, I like to say I'm somewhat of an expert in the industry, but there's obviously people out there who have different stories, and the best advice I can give to you is really network, talk to people, talk to other flight school owners, talk to me or one of my team members. We talk to them, to flight schools all day, every day. So we know, we work with them pretty close hand. But yeah, I'd say profit margin 5%, 15%, if they're lucky. Some of them are red for a long time too. A lot of flight schools are red, and that kind of gets into the what scares off flight schools owners the most. An overhaul is a big expense. You're talking 10s, 20, 30, 40, even 50 grand to do an overhaul, depending on what type of engine you're working with. and who you know. And this flight school I was flying at. They were making this joke because their profit margins are pretty low, and they were making a joke that they're one accident away from going bankrupt. I mean, it's kind of sad in a way. It's a great flight school, by the way. I love that flight school. So yeah, average revenue. I would say, yeah, if you want to take the average of it, I'd probably say it's around $1 million. If you take, because obviously you have some big players out there that have this, that are over the 10 million mark, 8 figures in revenue. They're out there. It's just they're rare. I think a majority of what I see on a day-to-day basis is it's usually around this range right here. I mean, I think there's a lot of flight schools that are at this range that because that kind of includes the independent CFIs. There's a lot of them that are at this point. They just never scale up to $1 million or so. Okay, so we talked about revenue, average expenses, how many employees on average does the flight school have. So I would probably say about 2 CFIs per plane usually is appropriate. Eventually you can kind of scale that down a little bit, maybe to 1 CFI per plane. Most flight schools have around, I want to say 3 to 10 CFIs, to be honest with you, if I was to kind of put a number on it. If you're just starting up, you're under $1 million, I see them usually have around 2 CFIs, 2 to 3. If they're multiple multiple 7 figures, or $1 million in revenue to 2 million, 3 million, kind of in this range here, I usually see around 5 to 10 CFIs, maybe a little more depending. A big part of that too is they're not. You don't want to make sure you don't want to pay them 1099. You want to make sure you go to W-2. I know that's a hard ask for some flight schools, especially when they're in the startup phase. Just for tax purposes mainly. If you listen to a lot of the teachings from the Flight School Association of North America, FASANA, we talk about that. We talk about the IRS will audit you eventually, especially if you're over that $1 million mark. They will audit. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And if you are providing uniforms, if you're telling your CFIs when to come to the flight school, if you're dictating their schedule and the tools they use, that's not really a 1099, it's a W-2. So that can be, you got payroll tax, you got, all that type of stuff that comes with that, benefits if you have health insurance and all that type of stuff. So if you're paying them to say 40K, 50K, then add another 15, 20K just for benefits, and that can take a big chunk out of your profit, margin. So, yeah, that's answered that question. Profit margin 5 to 15%. If you are rocking 20% and above in a flight school, I want to know your secret, because I'd like to share that to all my flight schools I work with. Toughest thing about being in a flight school is, and I don't think it's really about flight schools in general. I think it's more about being a business owner. It's the toughest thing about being a business owner, especially of a flight school. It's kind of internal, as entrepreneurs, as business owners, as leaders, we take this position, we take this role because of our passion for aviation, because our love of flight. We love helping people. That's kind of a main thing that I see with a lot of people is we care about our students, we care about our people we interact with, and we want to provide value, right? And a lot of that's it's a lot of sacrifice to ask of somebody to be a business owner, to give to the community. And I think the hardest part about being a business owner is the consistency of it. Making sure that you're always on your A game, making sure that whenever you feel weak, it's whenever you want to quit, those moments where you want to just give up and quit, I think those are the defining moments of an owner of a flight school or a business owner of even a marketing agency. And I know this guy wanted to be a marketing agency guy, but it's kind of that's what it is. What are some buzz phrases in flight schools? I think you're gonna know. You're gonna know the phrases if you're in aviation. So, for example, right rudder is a nice phrase to keep. Altitude is insurance. Altitude is height. Altitude is insurance. Speed is, I don't know. I've totally messed that phrase up. Shit. what was another one? I said another one like it takes 5 million to make 1 million in the industry. I think what he was actually going for is not the buzz phrases that we use as pilots or aviation people. It's not really the buzz phrases, but more so the keywords. He was really kind of going on the keywords there because, like he said, he's trying to be a social media marketing agency, and we actually have an article about that in our website as far as keywords go. So I was kind of going over here buzz phrases in flight schools. I believe. Let's see if I can pull this website up here. We have keywords here. So there's some keywords in here. So flight school is probably the biggest one in here. Aviation training, pilot training, how to become a pilot. Incident rating, aviation safety is kind of good ones. You usually want to do for keywords if you're looking for keyword research is take those keywords, take your location. So let's say I'm in San Diego, I'd put flight school San Diego. That's a long tail keyword. You want to use that in your marketing, whether it's your headlines, your title, whether it's your social media posting, whatever it is. You always want to have a service offering. That's part one of the keyword, and then the second part of the keyword is the location. All right, so that's kind of the buzz phrases in there. The best offer, I'm going to be honest with you, as far as the best, most profitable offer you can get is the 0 to Hero training. Private pilot, instrument, commercial, CFI. If you can get a guy or a girl to go from 0 hours all the way to become a CFI within a year or 2 years, and they invest in your flight school about $100,000, and they commit the whole length, that's usually the best kind of bang for buck because you get that instant revenue boost, and you also get that longevity of recurring pilots coming to your school. So that's if you can offer some type of program that goes 0 to Hero, that would probably that's really what not I don't want to say sets you apart, but it's the most profitable kind of model there. So hope that answers your questions there. I think I got a lot of them. If you have any questions additionally, reach out to me directly. I'm Tim from Right Rudder Marketing, and not trying to sell any packages, not trying to sell any marketing services, but if you're a flight school owner and you want some need any help with marketing or anything like that, then feel free to give me a call. Let's schedule a session. Let's look at your marketing. Let's look at your competitors. Let's look at what we can do to really propel you to the next, go from class Bravo to Alpha, So get higher. Yeah. So get higher, hire me, and let's get good. Let's get going. But yeah, no, I'm not trying to sell anything. If this is more informative. If you really want, some more information, we have webinars every third Thursday of the month. We have a webinar. Lots of information on the flight school industry. Different vendors go on the podcast webinar thing, and we talk about their products and services. We talk about the market, the industry, and all that type of stuff. So that's all I have for you today. If you have anything else, just holler at me later. See you soon.